suspicion and questions regarding the Indian Minerals West at the time. There were a lot of questions regarding their development of their resources and how the royalties were divided up with the oil companies.
We came up with a number of recommendations. One was to amend the regulations to allow First Nations to have greater say in how their oil and gas is developed on reserve, revamp Indian Minerals West into a crown entity.
There was communities doing a lot of their own things, understandably. They were shelled in their own communities, having some success, and working with government on their own. There needed to be this group put together, and there needed to be an organization that really spoke up.
We came back with a staff complement of 65 people, and of the 65 people, the head of the organization, we strongly advised and recommended, and it was accepted by the government, that be a First Nation person. As a result, IRC, Indian Resource Council, was born.
Government is always developing policy. They're policy driven. The Indian Resource Council was established to provide interpretation of that policy and ensure that treaty-based First Nations were aware of how certain policies could affect their treaty rights. The Indian Resource Council was created to provide, for lack of a better term, watchdog services for our First Nations.
The advocacy body, it's a lobbying body, a coordinating body. They are not the ones that will identify the positions of First Nations, but rather they will promote First Nations positions.
The biggest mandate was, and it still should be, is the eventual taking control of First Nations oil and gas development on Indian lands by First Nations.
JTC was formed a few years ago, and it's working with IOGC in helping us vet our regulations.
Called Joint Technical Committee 1. They sit with the Indian Oil and Gas Canada. They go through what is being proposed, what it is that we want as First Nations, and what we're experiencing within our respective nations in terms of oil and gas development, how we're dealing with industry, oil and gas companies coming on reserve, how we're going to protect the interests of First Nations.
You don't get that anywhere else. You don't get that with healthcare, you don't get that with education. This document is a very key component to helping a federal act where First Nations are actually part of it.
The other piece is training.
We need to find ways to continue to get our individual members participating. Energy covers off almost all vocations. Your lawyers, scientists, your business people, your accountants, and your trades.
We have an organization right now within IRC called NEPSI. Their responsibility is to take First Nations from where they are right now, high school or wherever they are, and provide them with the basics and the knowledge and the background so that they can pursue careers in the oil and gas industry.
There's opportunities all over. We have some very strong First Nations with their own oil and gas activity. They have their own companies and they're doing very well with their oil and gas productions. And we want to help other First Nations to get there, and that's what NEPSI's supposed to do, is to build to that.
Prior to the IRC coming into place, there was only Indian Oil and Gas Canada, and there was no mediate that would be able to mediate on behalf of First Nations.
It's a body, an organization that represents chief and councils and help facilitate the dialogue between industry and First Nations.
Industry has a lot of interest in First Nations issues, and in order to be successful in their business, they need to engage First Nations. They need to involve them, and we play that role to make sure that there is a relationship healthy enough between First Nation and industry that can make them work together and successfully for each other's benefit.
I had a mother who used to sit on IRC, and some of the things that she brought forward, I can see now as I look at the mandate that IRC has. I see that we continually have to be sitting at those tables to address what our nations need.
We are owners of this country. We should be nation builders of this country. But we now, as leaders, should be at the forefront, working with governments, working with industry to build this country on the condition that we now share the resources going forward. We're just not reserve people. We're people of Canada.